Hi, you beautiful New Zealanders. Well, we're now doing part 6 of our series on the 440 church leaders and their response. David Seymour's Treaty Principles bill, which they sent a letter to the parliamentarians and told them to trash David's bill, and there's no good reason to do that at all. So we're really exposing the corruption of these 440 church leaders. So if you missed the series 1 to 5, I've done 5 videos already. Today is number 6, so we're just going to crack straight into it. Please go back and have a look at the others, and you can download this document that I'm reading from here in the description of this video. So I'd like you to send that to church leaders in your area. Just Google all the church leaders in your area and any Christians you know anywhere and send them a copy of this letter. Just email it to them, and that won't cost you anything. That would be a great thing to do. So let's crack into today's video, number 6 in our series, David Seymour's bill and his original 3 principles. Now I've got a footnote there, so let's go down to the footnote at the bottom. His original 3 principles were, and I call it the original 3 because number 2, his second principle, he was subjected to a forced change. Luxon and company forced him to change principle 2, which has really stuffed things up. But his original 3 were absolutely fantastic, and they were: the New Zealand government has the right to govern all New Zealanders. I mean, who would argue with that? Number 2, the New Zealand government will honour all New Zealanders in the chieftainship of their land and their property. Now, I've talked about that in other videos about how everybody is really the chiefs of their land and their possessions, their assets. So that's not unique to Maori. That applies to everybody. And who would argue with that you can feel secure with your land and your property, that nobody's going to take it from you illegally? Well, who would argue with that? And number 3, all New Zealanders are equal under the law with the same rights and duties. So those 3 are just fundamental to a democracy, I would have thought. But you know what? The church leaders don't like them, and nor do the Maori activists, which tells me that the church leaders are activists. Recently, David was forced by Cabinet, that is Luxon and Co., to change Principle 2 to read the rights of Hapu and Iwi Maori. Then it reads, the Crown recognises the rights that Hapu and Iwi had when they signed the treaty. Well, you know what? They had the same rights as all the rest of New Zealanders. So what are they talking about? They had no more rights and no less rights. So this is a warped activist understanding of the treaty that's coming right through here in the centre of our government. The Crown will respect and protect those rights. Yes, but the Crown must respect and protect exactly the same rights that all New Zealanders had. Read Article 2 of the treaty yourself. Just see. It says all the people of New Zealand, not just Maori. Those rights differ from the rights anyone has reasonable expectation to enjoy only when they are specified in legislation, treaty settlements, and other agreements with the Crown. In other words, what they're saying here is that Maori have special rights. No, they don't. Not in the treaty. Nothing in the treaty, when you read it, gives Maori special rights. It gives everybody the same rights. Everybody was a British citizen, and if you're a British citizen, you had the same rights as every other British citizen. There was not a two-tiered society. So our government is peddling a false, fraudulent understanding of the treaty, and they've just forced it on David Seymour. How's that? That's Luxon, and that's Potaka. They're activists. You've got a government in here that is as bad as Ardern and her crew and Hipkins when it comes to their understanding of the treaty and how New Zealand should respond to it. Truly, they're absolutely corrupt. They're activists. Anyway, let's keep going. This change to Principle 2 is a disaster, as it effectively maintains the status quo. We will be fighting to revert back to the original wording of David's Principle 2. So let's go right back to the top again. David Seymour's bill and his original 3 principles, rather than an activist interpretation of the treaty, provides a wonderful moral compass for democracy. Who, in their right mind, would argue with those 3 principles? The answer is only Maori activists and the 440 church leaders. Plus Chris Luxon and Potaka and the National Party, they are all in on this as well, this fraudulent understanding of the treaty, and that all stems from history ignorance. Clearly, these 440 church leaders would prefer to live in an apartheid state. How's that? How's that for Christian people recommending that New Zealand become an apartheid state? How's that? Come on. No thanks. This is not what the treaty mandates, and certainly not what the chiefs in 1840 agreed to or the British intended to set up here. The British would never have set up an apartheid state here. This is parallel universe stuff. This is ridiculous. This is really out there. Here's the next statement by the 440 Christian leaders. By contrast, we believe the Treaty Principles Bill will lead to division between the peoples of Aotearoa and New Zealand. That's not even the name of our country. We're just New Zealand, thanks. Cause the spread of disinformation and hinder efforts at healing and reconciliation. I say 3 big accusations. David's bill spreads disinformation and it will hinder efforts at healing and reconciliation. Well, let me just tell you what that is about. That is all spin. That is all fake. That is all wrong. That is all just made up. Ironically, the spread of misinformation is all coming from the activists, proved by the church leaders. In bullet point form, this misinformation includes but is not limited to to ideas like the treaty is a partnership. The 440 church leaders are spreading that idea. So are Maori activists. It's not a partnership. So let's keep reading. The treaty mandated a two-tier society. No, it didn't. The treaty mandated the formation of an apartheid state. No, it didn't. Via the treaty, Maori were to be afforded special rights and privileges over other citizens. No, they were not. Via the treaty, so these church leaders and these activists say, Maori have the right to set up their own government. No, they don't. That's treason. Via the treaty, Maori can be appointed to governance roles, that's like Maori wards, without being voted on. No, you can't do that. That's apartheid. That's separatism. That's treating one group with giving them different rights to everybody else. That's not what a democracy does. Via the treaty, Maori must be involved in the leadership of our society and in all organisations in society as of right. No. If you want to be involved in every area, you have to win your place. You can't just be appointed. Via the treaty, only Maori can interpret what the treaty means. Well, that's absolute corruption. And it's absolute arrogance, because the British knew what the treaty meant. Why not ask them? Why not ask all the other New Zealanders? You don't have to be a Maori to interpret what the treaty means. You just read the final English draft, and we've got that. The treaty is a sacred covenant. No, it's not. There's nothing in the treaty about it being a sacred covenant. Well, what's more misinformation that they're spreading? The treaty is a living document, they say, and therefore its meaning can be changed according to the circumstances at hand. No, it's not. The treaty is a fixed, solid, set in concrete document whose meaning does not change over time. Next one, that the treaty can only be truly understood by Maori language experts. That's absolute nonsense. That's just spin. That's rubbish. And so on. And so what I'm saying here is that these 440 church leaders are acting like Maori activists, and they're actually the ones who are spreading the treaty misinformation all around the place. As I said, what's most troubling of all is that the 440 church leaders are supportive of this misinformation, endorsing it. For this, the Bible condemns them. The church leaders are saying right is wrong and wrong is right. What does the Bible say about that? Isaiah 55 verse 20 warns, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. You start changing the labels around on things, God's not happy with that. This speaks to the inversion of truth and falsehood, which is what the church leaders are doing. This is serious stuff. These guys are in trouble. Te Tiriti o Waitangi as a covenantal relationship. We affirm the church is ongoing, special and historic relationship with Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which many Christians view as a sacred covenant. Well, there it is there. You know what? The British consider it to be a very special document, but it's not a sacred covenant. It's a treaty, and it should be honored by both parties, not just one. The treaty is not a sacred covenant. It's a fully secular treaty. There is no mention in the speeches of the chiefs on the 5th of February or the 6th of February or at any other of the signing ceremonies that the treaty was a sacred covenant. None. When one reads the treaty, there is not one mention of God or sacred or covenant anywhere. Just read the treaty and have a look for yourself. With no evidence to back their claim, we can only conclude that the 440 church leaders are deliberately spreading misinformation. If we're really honest, this is a nice way of just saying they're lying. How would Jesus view church leaders who lie? Come on, you know the answer. So why are the activists now labeling the treaty a sacred covenant? And I'm calling these 440 church leaders now activists because that's what they are. The answer is that through the rulings of our corrupt courts in the Waitangi Tribunal, through foolish legislation passed by government since 1974, through the introduction of treaty principles, through Hugh Carfury's fraudulent interpretation of the treaty in 1989, through all these means and others, activists have the treaty right where they want it, which means what? They want to be in control of its interpretation. They want to be the only ones who can say what it means. They want to be in control of the entire narrative around the treaty. Labeling it as sacred sends a clear message to all non-Maori that you're not allowed to touch it, interpret it in any other way other than the way we interpret it. Labeling it as sacred is another way of saying, don't you dare touch our sacred cash cow. Why is this? Well, the answer is because the treaty has been hugely profitable for Maori. As I just said, it's a cash cow. Dr. Michael Bassett agrees, but it is much more than this. Maori want to take over the country by 2040. They have openly said so. For proof of that, read here. Click on that hyperlink. Okay, that's enough for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and make a comment. It really helps us. And let's expose all this corruption. Please keep getting the cards out that we've got, the business cards, keep getting those out. And the best thing you can do right now is find the names of all the church leaders on Google in your area, get their email addresses and send them a copy of this document, which I'm reading from, the response to the 440 church leaders, and email it to them, please. You didn't write it, I did. Tell them Julian Batchelor wrote it. Or you can say, you know, whatever you like. But get it to your church leaders. We need to do this because these guys need to be called out. All right. Thanks for listening. See you next time.